Oh, baby, we are waking and we are taking this morning. Sorry that we are a little bit late, but we're here now. Thank you so much to the good people in the chat. We got Mark Grebler. We got Best Ball on Call. Good morning. Good morning. Wake and take. We got Dakota Vander Hoof. Hopefully, I'm saying that right. Probably not. If anybody knows what it's like to have their name butchered, it's somebody named Seth Dewald, and that's spelled Diewold, right? Oh, I don't know who this guy is, but he's here. Jason Alwine. He's supposed to be on vacation, not watching videos, but he's here anyway. Robert Pfeiffer, good morning, and another OG of the underworld, Bradley Stalder, in with us this morning as we are going to talk about a topic that I am very, very passionate about. I started a whole show on this premise. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called the Dynasty Roundtable. It's going to be on tonight, 7 p.m. Central Time on the Player Profiler YouTube channel. Check it out. But we're going to start talking today about building dynasty teams the right way. So we're sitting here on July 17th, right? July 17th, 9:11 a.m. in the morning. And I'm going to start waking and taking about building dynasty teams the right way. So how do you go about building a super team in Dynasty that can compete not just for 1 year, but for multiple seasons, possibly the duration of the league? And just so everybody's aware, the average Dynasty league, last time I checked, lasts about 2.5 years. All right. So we're not too interested in building a super productive struggle team. Like there's a balance to be struck. And the best dynasty managers are people, individuals who can balance the future with the here and now. And they can build teams that can win right away and win for year after year after year. So today I'm going to show you how I do it, the strategies that I've learned over the years. And the number one thing I would recommend is, it's obvious, but the startup is where everything starts. And I'm not going to focus too hyperbolically on the dynasty startup today. I made another video on my channel about dynasty startup strategy. I would highly encourage you to check that out. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about strategies for teams that are already built, right? So building your team the right way post dynasty startup. But obviously the best way to give yourself the best chance, because you're picking players, is in the dynasty startup. And in the dynasty startup, you can focus on younger players, younger assets, making your roster valuable, right? And so what I'm going to talk about, I get this question a lot, is what kinds of players should I target? And we make videos all the time like, okay, these players, you need to trade for player X, Y, Z, get Jordan Addison off your team right now. Those videos serve a purpose. But it's really kind of the wrong question, to be honest. If we're focusing like on strategy, we need to be focused, like I said, on making our rosters valuable. And doing this in the dynasty startup, like I said, is the best way to set yourself up for success. Acquiring rookie picks, younger players with upside are ways we can make our rosters full of desirable assets that other teams are going to want to trade for. And while some of these assets aren't going to help us win right away, it is far easier to go from a roster that is full of younger players, future rookie picks, to a contending team, right? Like it's way easier to go from a younger team full of just assets that every dynasty manager is going to want to trade for than it is to go from, a veteran-laced team that, might have a chance of winning, but, nobody really wants to trade for, Derrick Henry, or somebody's not going to give you a ton for DeAndre Hopkins. You get what I'm saying? Like if your entire strategy is just so focused, hyperbolically focused on winning now, that might pay off in the very short term, but in the long term, you're going to be in a world of hurt because you're going to have aging players who aren't producing and that nobody wants to trade for. Okay. So when I say focus on younger players, I don't mean that you have to go out and draft only rookies, right? It doesn't mean that you have to avoid veterans completely. It doesn't mean that. But there are some ways, some calculated bets that you can make, and they don't always pay off. But when you're targeting players both to trade for and to draft, and just look at last year, right? Sam Laporta, CJ Stroud, they broke out in a major way in 2023. Laporta finished as the tight end 1 overall, tight end 3 in fantasy points per game, and he's just 23 years old at the tight end position. And his dynasty value obviously increased. CJ Stroud, same deal, finished as the quarterback 11 overall, quarterback 7 in fantasy points per game last year. Both of these players massively increased their dynasty values big time. But it can go the other way too when you focus on younger players, right? What about Bryce Young? What about Kyle Pitts? Bryce Young was the number 1 overall pick last season, and he had a terrible time. Young finished as the quarterback 23 overall and the quarterback 29 in fantasy points per game. Kyle Pitts is another example of a promising tight end with a lot of potential that just hasn't produced yet on a consistent basis in fantasy football. However, like if you drafted Bryce Young and Kyle Pitts on your dynasty team, it's not great, but you're not up the creek without a paddle just yet. I mean, these players, in the case of Bryce Young, it's a little bit less, like his value is a little bit less. Like he's at quarterback 20 right now, according to Keep Trade Cut. But these players still have good dynasty value because if you squint hard enough, you can see the upside, even with Bryce Young. I mean, look at what the Carolina Panthers did. They are hell bent on making Bryce Young their franchise quarterback. They spent heavily on the offensive line. They added just about every skill position imaginable in the offseason. Deontay Johnson they traded for, Jonathan Brooks, Xavier Legette, right, to add to that already crowded, weird wide receiver room in Carolina. So these are players that you can focus on, right? And obviously, I'm not telling you to go out and trade for Sam Laporta now. The move would have been, last year to target, a player like Sam Laporta. And I'm gonna show you kind of the model of players that I look to target, I look to trade for. And these are younger players that have the draft capital that we're looking for. We're looking round 1, round 2. In the case of Sam Laporta, for example, he was a early round 2 pick by the Lions. And then situation, right? Will they have opportunity to compete right away for a starting roster spot, or are they going to be sitting on the bench for a while? And we're going to go back to that Sam Laporta example because he's kind of the shining example of what can happen. He's the beacon of hope for all younger players, and he completely ruined the tight end position. So this isn't maybe the perfect example, but it shines the light on why you should target younger players. It doesn't have to be rookies, but rookies with upside later in your dynasty drafts. The Lions had a good offensive line. They had a quarterback who wasn't going to run around a ton and had a history of being able to throw if given time to throw. And Sam Laporta had limited competition for targets at the position. So when you looked at all those factors, even when we get this perfect scenario, though, there isn't a guarantee that players are going to perform for our fantasy teams, right? But every single every single light was green for Laporta to succeed right away. And like I said, Laporta is that shining example, especially at the tight end position. And it's extremely rare for players to hit that early. And some rookies that are in the great situations to succeed right away are Keon Coleman, Lad McConkey, Caleb Williams in a single quarterback league can be had at a pretty decent value right now. Jalen Polk is somebody who's going way later. He could be the wide receiver 1 in New England. So targeting these players like that have the draft capital, that are in situations that we like, are great ways to strengthen a dynasty roster, even if you're in that terrible situation of having a veteran-laced roster that's not very valuable. You can still make moves to strengthen your team, to make it better for the future and the here and now. Also, and this is just a preference on my side, right? I would personally avoid investing heavily in running backs unless we are talking the elite of the elite running backs. We're talking Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall. And honestly, well, I won't say that. I almost said, honestly, I would, where those players are getting drafted, like I would much prefer to take a wide receiver at that same value if it's a one quarterback league, or a quarterback at that spot in a super flex, but I digress. And the reason being that I don't like to target running backs early is because running backs tend not to hold their value as well as other positions, and it's very easy to acquire a veteran running back via trade in Dynasty. That's been my experience, and I view running backs as the cherry on top of my Dynasty roster. And so when I'm trying to acquire a valuable roster, I tend to seek out other positions first. I think wide receivers typically are more valuable. The duration of the career is longer. Quarterbacks in a super flex league, same story. They hold their value longer, especially if they're a starting caliber quarterback. I mean, just look at a quarterback like Derek Carr. Like, he's been solid. He's going to be a starter in the NFL. Jared Goff, boring, but they're going to hold their value. They're going to be starters in this league. There are 32 of these positions, and these guys rank, somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 20. Maybe I'm doing Goff a disservice there, but you get what I'm trying to say. So I generally, when I'm building my dynasty teams, I don't seek out the running back position. I don't invest heavily in it right away, just because I think that I can go out and acquire a veteran running back, and that can be the cherry on top of my team. So let's recap real quick. All right, before we take a break here, before I get to some of the chat comments as they roll in. And thank you for watching, by the way. Don't forget to click the like button, subscribe to the channel, as always. So let's recap. All right, so number one, you should be focused on value first. You want to build a valuable roster, because it's way easier to go from a roster full of young assets, rookie picks that other dynasty managers are going to want to trade for, to a contending team, than it is to have a roster full of veterans, right? Older players that are producing now, but they're getting older, and it's just going to be really hard to make moves to improve your team with those kinds of assets on your squad. And you definitely can build a roster that's young, that is full of good assets, that is also a win now team. So that should be your goal, right? You can mix in a few veterans here and there to increase your chances, but overall, we should be focused on building a valuable roster. And you can use a website called dynastydaddy.com to evaluate both your chances of winning the league, where they evaluate your roster from a value standpoint as well. Highly recommend it. And the players that you should be focused on acquiring are younger players. They don't have to be rookies. We use mostly rookies in our examples, but we want to target players who have high draft capital, because this means that the team invested heavily in them. I mean, Bryce Young is the ultimate example of that, right? Because he had a terrible year last year, but the Panthers, because they chose him number one overall, are hell-bent on having him succeed for the future. And you're seeing all the assets that they're throwing at their offense. And we're also looking for a great situation, which is not something Bryce Young had last year. He has a better situation this year. So I think Bryce Young's a good target in 2024 for dynasty leagues, especially Superflex, probably only Superflex. So draft capital and situation are the two most important things. And we use the example of Sam Laporta, who's the beacon of all hope for especially tight ends, especially younger tight ends. And then we gave you some examples of players to target. And I realize now they're mostly wide receivers, but I threw one quarterback in there. Keon Coleman, Ladd McConkey, Caleb Williams, Jalen Polk, all players that are valuable, all players that are probably going to produce for your team right away. And these should be targeted. These players should be priority targets over, a veteran that could probably produce the same amount of fantasy points. When we come back from the break, all right, we are going to discuss, okay, my roster's valuable. Now what do I do? How do I make calculated moves to improve my team, to make it a championship caliber team? All of that and much, much more when we come back from the break after this message from the Podfather about, and this is FFPC. So here we go. Don't go anywhere, because we got so much more after the break.
Hey, why do we partner with the FFPC? Because they have the widest variety of fantasy football formats, and it's the easiest place to find all types of fantasy football contests in the world. What if you want to play for high stakes? Well, they have a $6 million prize pool with their Fantasy Players Championship. They also have way too early best ball leagues that start in February and Dynasty leagues. They have the closest thing to a liquid market for orphans that there is in all of Dynasty. And the FFPC has sponsored us for half a decade because we are actually delivering information that can help fantasy gamers, and they're generating so much interest and bringing in so many new users, casual users even. The FFPC creates a unique experience where you can both compete against the best and make money. Use promo code UNDERWORLD to get $25 off your first team. $25 off your first team at the FFPC with promo code UNDERWORLD. Go get it!
All right, promo code UNDERWORLD on the FFPC, and I realize I have Bradley's comment up there for the first 15 minutes of the show. We'll do better in the next part. Okay, I promise. So we've talked about what the foundation of your team should be. You should focus on building a valuable team. Players that other dynasty managers are going to want to target. So let's say you have a lot of valuable assets, but you have some value, and you're going to want to make your team more of a win now team. And the good news is, once you've built that solid foundation for yourself with high quality assets, now you can carefully go about the offseason seeking out trades that make sense for your team. And if your goal is to win now, then you can use ADP tools. There are several out there. There are some on Player Profiler, or you can use rankings such as Keep, Trade, Cut. We reference those all the time on the show to help you target players that have been solid producers in the past. And I know I just mentioned Keon Coleman as a player that, you can target, but according to Keep, Trade, Cut's rankings, like if you think that Keon Coleman is not going to be a super producer right away, that's a player that has a ton of interest from other dynasty managers. So, for example, you could probably trade Keon Coleman for Deebo Samuel if you have too much unknown youth and want a receiver who can produce right now for your fantasy team. I know a lot of people are going to go, oh, why in the world would you trade Keon Coleman for Deebo Samuel? And I am first among those. But those people, I would, in a vacuum, if I'm looking at that trade with no context, as we do all the time in the fantasy football industry, which is insane, by the way. We need context for trades. Because the goal of trades, as we all know, is and I know this might be a lost art to some people, but I'm going to say this very carefully into the microphone. Trades are designed, or should be designed, to help both teams. Both teams. I'm talking to you, lopsided trade guy, who just fires off like a million trades that have no chance of being accepted 99.9% of the time. I'm looking right at you, okay? Don't be that guy. So I get it. In a vacuum, we're not interested in trading Keon Coleman for Deebo Samuel because Keon Coleman is in a great situation. We think he could potentially be the wide receiver one. Hell, he has maybe the highest upside of all the rookie wide receivers in this class. And Deebo Samuel is an older receiver with injury histories. There's risk in acquiring him. Hell, you could probably get Deebo Samuel for less than Keon Coleman. But this is just an example. When you look at Keep, Trade, Cut and the rankings, those two players are pretty close. And you could probably get something back on top of Deebo Samuel in exchange for Keon Coleman if there's a team that has Deebo Samuel that's in that terrible situation where they have all these veteran players. Like, they come to you. This is why you build a valuable team first. They come to you and say, hey, you have a lot of youth that, you have a lot of players that are younger that are probably going to produce, but do you want to take some of that uncertainty away? Because, for every Sam Laporta, there's a Bryce Young, right? That's not going to produce to the level that we think. I mean, Kyle Pitts, we referenced him earlier. We've been thinking that Kyle Pitts could be the tight end one overall in fantasy for the past couple seasons. At least I have. I thought he had that kind of upside, and he's come nowhere close. We think he's going to be a lot better this year. He will be a lot better this year, which, not to go off too much on a tangent, but Kyle Pitts has to be among one of the top buys in Dynasty, and I don't know why he's not ranked higher, but I digress. But the point is, it's so much easier to make trades when you have assets that people want. And I know that's a relevant relevation, right? It's Seth, he is a genius. He's saying, "Oh, it's way easier to trade when you have desirable assets." Yeah, I mean, obviously. And so you can make these calculated moves. You can take your time because kickoff isn't until September, and you can find the most value because you are in a position of power now. You don't have to trade Keon Coleman for Deebo Samuel. Probably get more, right? Another example that I can use. What if you have Ricky Pearsall? You could according to Keep Trade Cut, Ricky Pearsall for Cooper Kupp's a pretty fair deal. And as I said before, and I'm going to look into the camera one more time, trades are supposed to benefit both sides. And I know some of us have forgotten that, but it's okay. I'm here to remind you. So, by building a dynasty team the right way, managers can operate from this position of strength. So, to wrap up, right? To wrap up here, as we're about 20 minutes in, and we'll see if there's any comments to get to, and we'll get to those here in a minute. But just to wrap up, right? As I've been saying, it is way easier to build a dynasty team by starting with a valuable roster and to focus on extracting as much value in the offseason as you possibly can. So this means it's wise to draft youthful players with upside to acquire rookie picks in the startup. This does not mean, as I said, a dynasty gamer has to go full productive struggle. In fact, I would very much recommend not doing that because, and I used to be the biggest productive struggle guy, and sometimes I still do it if it's a league that I believe is going to last for multiple years. But if you're in a league with your buddies, I mean, life happens. You know, the wives get upset that you're spending so much time on this fantasy football. Like, things happen, right? We all know this. So the average dynasty league lasts 2.5 years, guys. 2.5 years. So, and each one of those years, like, if let's just say it lasts 3 years, you're going to want to maximize each and every single one of those years. So going productive struggle in that scenario doesn't make much sense. But you can go win now and you can go youth at the same time. And focusing in on those younger assets that have a great chance of winning now is the way to go, because that's where you want to be. And once the roster is full of those valuable assets, then a dynasty gamer can go about making careful and concise trades to mold their team into both a win now team and a team that can win in the future. And after all, the goal of dynasty and the goal of fantasy football is to win every year, right? So that's the end game. Even if you're a productive struggle team, you want to win every year. So why not build a dynasty team that has the best chance of doing that? On my channel, you can check out the video where I go over a lot of these different tactics. I put a team out there. I put some trades out there. Heck, I'll talk about one of the trades right now because I know it's going to be unpopular. So this is an example, and this is coming from a team that was a productive struggle team. I don't regret it, because sometimes I do that. It's on a safe league, so I trust that those leagues are going to be around for a long time. So there I don't have as big of a problem going productive struggle. And I'll just talk about this trade because I know some of you are going to hate it. I gave up Trey Benson, Kendre Miller, Jordan Addison, and Josh Palmer. So that's side one. I apologize. I don't have a fancy graphic. And I got back Derrick Henry, Brian Robinson, Cooper Kupp, Chig Okonkwo, and a 2024 third-round rookie pick. So in a vacuum, you go, oh, my God, Trey Benson, Kendre Miller, Jordan Addison. Like, those are younger players that you shouldn't give up. Like, you could have got back a lot more. Maybe, probably. Did I have to make this trade as soon as I did? Probably not. But it was an offer that I had. And generally speaking, this might have been dumb because I went out and acquired veterans way sooner than I had to. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing this. This is me playing with fire. I do that from time to time because Dynasty is supposed to be, fun, and sometimes trades aren't on offer later on. But anyway, you get the point. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend trading for veterans right now. But I got Derrick Henry, who I think is going to be really good in Baltimore. Brian Robinson, super underrated. Cooper Kupp, again, I think is going to be great in that Rams offense. And Chigakonkwo, it's a 2 points per tight end premium league. And Chigakonkwo could provide some value there too. And, Trey Benson's going to be a backup this year. Kendre Miller's a relative unknown. Jordan Addison just got a huge downgrade in quarterback. So again, if you plug it into a trade calculator, I lost the trade. I understand that. But since I was operating from that position of strength where I had all these rookies and all this, like my roster is still chock full of rookies. And this is why I don't like looking at dynasty trades, just putting them on the board. Like, look at that trade. Side A completely won that trade. Like, I've seen things, and not just to go on a tangent for this, like too long. I've seen trades that people are adamant, like, that's a terrible trade, like, that completely pan out for the other side. Like, we have no idea. Like, we can give it our best guess, but again, like, the context of this trade is I had a ton of rookies on my team. I have a ton of youth on my team, and I'm looking to go out and acquire win now pieces that can help take me to a championship level team, right? So that's the context. And it's not to say that, you should go out and acquire veteran players right now. I'm not saying that. I probably made this move too early. I probably did. I'll admit that. But it was a move to help me win now, to take me from a rebuilding team to a win now team. And I still have plenty of youth on the roster. So leave a comment. Let me know what you think. I'll get to some of these chats here. Thank you guys for watching the show. Jason says you build a super team by drafting Ryan Flournoy in round 1. Hell yeah, bro. What if you have a roster full of value, but they're all bad players? Like, you're gonna have, like, that would be very uncommon, I would say. But if they're valuable, you can get something for them, right? So if you think they're bad players, then there's probably a market for those players in your dynasty league. Like I would just off the top of my head, like Cam Akers was one. I mean, look at how long Cam Akers held his value, right? And now he's basically dead in dynasty. But you get what I mean. Like, even players who are underperforming, if they're younger, they're going to hold their dynasty value for longer. So you're going to have an opportunity for a longer stretch of time to trade those players away. Good morning, Chief. Yes, youth and startups. That's my preferred method as well. Thank you, Mark. Is there any worth in me keeping DTR at Cleveland as my quarterback 2 at the moment, behind Herbert as my QB1? I assume you mean Dorian Thompson-Robinson. If it's a super flex, and depending on how deep your leagues are, and to be honest, I haven't checked the Cleveland depth chart recently. I don't know if he's I don't know if he's the backup. I would probably say no, unless you have deep rosters, because he's a late round quarterback, and I just like Deshaun Watson's the guy there, so I would probably say no. Good morning. Yes, rewatch it. I said a lot of dumb things, so you're gonna have to rewatch it. I have a huge list of trades I made last year that content creators crapped on me that helped me win multiple championships. Yes, thank you. The goal is to win championships, not like, yes, acquiring, like I just told you, to acquire a valuable roster, but the goal is to eventually shape that and mold that valuable roster into a championship winning team that still can compete for multiple seasons. You can absolutely do it. Thank you, Jason. You're the man. This, by the way, you need to be watching Wake and Take. I'm hijacking the show with all my nonsense and BS, all right, and all my babble, my psycho babble. I'm hijacking the show today. But Jason is the real hero because he does this show every day. I'm the substitute teacher. I'm the grandpa. I'm just popping in with my zany thoughts and ideas about how you should build a dynasty team as my voice cracks. So again, click the like button for Jason. Don't click it for me. I'm looking to move on from Kenny Gainwell. What's his worth for another RB? The unfortunate thing is Kenny Gainwell's value is not very high right now because of the Will Shipley factor, and Saquon's probably going to have Saquon's going to get a ton of volume this year, unfortunately. Well, not unfortunately. I love Saquon Barkley. I don't know why I said that, but maybe you can get a 4th round rookie pick for him. Maybe. Unfortunately, I think that's where you're at. Good morning, Derek. What's going on? Jameis Winston season. Is he maybe he's the backup in Cleveland now. I'd have to thanks for another great show. Thank you, man. Eat the dub and drop DTR. Yeah. How did I not know that Jameis Winston's the backup QB? I feel like Jameis Winston's playing for another team every single year. But anyway, Jason's confirming it. Yes, he is. All right. That is going to do it for me. Thank you so much again for watching. Don't forget to click the like button, subscribe to the channel. And until next time, build those dynasty rosters the right way. You'll thank me later. You can follow me on Twitter at Seth_DIEWOLD. My DMs are wide open. Got any questions, let me know. And until next time, be good, everybody, and we will see you later.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.